So for story six, I'm starting with this full-size photos, a few embellishments, and this cute little box that a few treats had come in. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the box apart. At first, I was just going to take that plastic off and put the photo inside, but then I thought, uh, a little shaker would be super cute. So I left the plastic. It was in pretty good shape. If it wasn't, I could have put acetate in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is do some score lines. They're the width of my foam tape, plus I did a little kind of a 16th, I guess, um, fold for the depth of my foam tape, just so that it would make a nice and square box, essentially. You'll see me using a ruler here to fold it up over top just to get a nice good crease. I'm going to be putting a photo on the back of this, so I wanted it to be as straight and as sturdy as I could using what I already had. And then we're going to cut off, or I'm going to cut off the corners here. I won't need those at all. It just adds an extra bulk if I already use those. So I'm just going to cut that off. And you'll notice I cut off the excess too after I did the score lines. It, it's much easier to do the score lines with those extra bits on there than it would be if I only had that small, like 1 inch-ish flap to work with. This makes it a little easier to get in there. So I'm still just doing all these score lines. It's a little fiddly, but worth it. So you'll notice I go over it a couple of times. This is fairly thick uh, box board. And then, like I said, I'll use a ruler to help the folds along a little bit. Just trimming off the excess there. So this ruler here that I'm using is a really thin, sharp-edged metal ruler. So you notice I also go on both sides of the fold, just because it's so thick, and then do a little burnish in the direction that I want it to go. And it just helps it to make nice, straight, even lines. Now that that's all finished up, they all fold in nicely. There's no edges showing through the window. I'm just going to add some anti-static powder to that plastic before I put my shaker bits in. Now, I put my shaker bits in before I did my foam tape. I should have done it the other way around. It's fine. It's just a little more fiddly this way because things, when I shift the box or bump it at all, the bits go everywhere, but it's fine. I just chose this little shaker mix. It's got green sequins and some little candy plastic bits. I also use these doodads, they're called. They're, I don't even know what to call them. They're just like rolled up shiny bits essentially. They squish, they're not hard at all. They're kind of cool. And then I added a little bit of gold as well, just to try and bring in all the colors from the album that I've been using. And then you'll see me next, I'll put the foam tape on. And then, so I'm going to do around the outside perimeter, as close to that fold as I can, just so that it folds up nice. You'll see me checking it a few times. And then I'm also going to add a little bit in each of the corners so that um, once I put the photo on, it stays up enough that in the corners that it's not sinking down. Now, if you want, you could also put thinner foam tape in that inner part that's next to the scallop, but I decided it was fine. I added enough bits in there that when it shakes or when it falls to the bottom, you can still see them a little bit. Um, so it's fine. So that's done for now. I set that aside. I'm just gonna trim my photo. I'll fiddle with this a little bit, measuring a couple of times, and I didn't want to get it I'd rather it was too big to start and then have to trim a little bit than have to get it too small first and then have to reprint it. So you'll see me cut it a couple of times here, just checking each time. I just want it to be large enough to go in there, or small enough to go in there, but large enough that it's going to cover the foam tape and make sure that it's outside of that scallop, essentially. So this is why I should have done my glitter and my sequins after I did the foam tape, but again, it's fine. Just have to make sure there's none on the foam tape before I put my photo down. So you'll see me fiddling with that and getting all the backing off of the foam tape. And I just spread the sequins around so that they're nice and flat for when I put the photo on, so nothing's stuck in there, that everything will move freely. And then just double check and everything looks good. It shakes nicely. So I'm just gonna kind of burnish the edges around the photo just to make sure they're adhered really well to the foam tape. And then I'm just gonna use my ATG to bring up the flaps. You'll see me cutting the corners here. That again just takes out some of the bulk and allows the flaps to come up and make a nice square. There's no measuring or anything. I just eyeballed it. It's fine. You can always trim a little bit more if you need to. So then I have a nice little shaker square. Decided to use page attachers to put this in my album. It's a weird kind of size. It's not quite big enough for 6 holes, so decided to use the smaller page attachers and cut them down so they're 2 holes each. I cut it fairly, you'll see here in a sec, I cut it fairly close to one of the holes, and then I will cut that one in half, so I have two. And then I put it so that the larger ends are in the middle so that it makes it more secure for the shaker card, the shaker box. And then I did a little mock up here just to make sure that it would work, that it would turn freely in the album. So I'm trying to use some tape runner here. It does not adhere. So I switch and just use some Scotch tape and attach this copy paper just temporarily to those and just to make sure that it's gonna work, and it does, which is awesome. And I'm just tearing off the paper, getting rid of the little glue bits that were left over that didn't really adhere in the first place. And then I'll leave the page attachers in the album. I'm going to close up the rings though and take off the backing so they're sticky. And then I'm going to leave it in there just so that I can line it up a little easier and make sure that it's in the right spot. And then I'll take it out to adhere it down. And it worked. So I'm happy with that. It is a little crooked. I don't know if you can tell, a little bit, I guess, but it works just fine. And here I'm just attaching that gingerbread little tag back on. I'm down at the bottom. I was going to use it as my journaling, but decided I would do that on the large photo instead. And then I haven't decided yet where the number will go. So I was originally going to do it in that coffee cup up there. This was going to be 2 stories. I was going to do a story of just these little treats and then a story about going to the market, but decided it would just be one story. So kind of shifting gears as I went here. So I'm just fiddling with that a little bit. Just putting a little glue dot on there so that it will hold secure up at the top, but I didn't want it to, I wanted it to be able to still move a little bit. I didn't want it in that little hole at the top. I'm just going to trim my little strings there and call that good for now. We'll move on to the full page photo here. I've sped this up a lot. It's a fairly simple layout. So first thing I'm doing is just trimming it down, laying out my embellishments. I'm going to use those vellum wreaths, one of them to cover up those ladies. and then use one of these. I'm not sure which um, little die cuts to put in there. I'll probably do some French knots to adhere that down. And then I'm also going to use that little tag. It's from a storyteller kit. I want to say the Fun Story Kit, possibly. Can't remember. Storyteller. Um, anyway, there's this little, it's a little pocket with a tag. I printed out my journaling on Mako sticker paper. You'll see me fiddling here with it. My hands have been really sore the last, I have arthritis. I think I've mentioned that before that, um, and with the cold, my hands have been really bad. And fiddly little bits like sticker paper are not my friend. So I'm just cutting it down to make sure that it's gonna fit in there nicely without too much grief. And then you'll see me fiddling at first trying to get it with my fingers, and I can't. So I just take out a little weeder tool from my Cricut and use that. And then finally get it all adhered down. I'm gonna take this little tag from the Star Kit and adhere that to the top of the tag. Thought that was kind of cute. And then I'm gonna just put the little string comes with the tag in the kit, which was kind of nice. So I'm just gonna put that on. Again, fiddling around because my hands. I just tied it on, I think, that first time. And I think eventually I switch it up. Yeah, I did. I took it back out and decided to put it the other way, I think. There we go. And then I'm gonna just adhere it with the tiny attacher just to give it a little bit of stability. And if if I'm gonna use it as journaling, it's gonna be in and out and flipped up quite a bit. So I just wanted to make sure it was nice and secure to um the little bow at the top there, which I do take out eventually, and it's not going to be a bow. But besides that was a little plain. Wanted to put a little word phrase sticker. Had these ones. These ones aren't stickers though; they're perforated, and that just says holiday vibes is what that says. Um, so I'm just gonna cut it down a little bit so it's not so thick. I wanted it just nice and thin on there. Hear that down. And then I decided it was a little plain on the bottom, so I took some of the washi tape from this year's kit and put that down to the bottom to just add a little more red to the layout where there's so much red on the shaker card or shaker box that I made, which will be on the right side of this layout here. So I'm going to hear that down. I did it so that the star tag was kind of slanted and then the word strip will be straight on. And then I'm gonna adhere this. I was just choosing which wreath to use first and decided on that one and decided on that Make Merry. So this is temporary adhesive. I'm just gonna place it where I want it. I'm gonna do some French knots here. So I'm going around with my pencil and just putting a dot on the one where on the berries essentially where I want to put the French knots, and then put a little foam pad in behind. This is my embroidery needle with some red embroidery floss. And lots of people have done this year for the French knots and last year. So I'll zoom through this a bit. But um, what I do first is poke my first hole through the front, but you're going to come up the back with a thread. But that way I know for sure I'm coming up in the right spot. And then I twirl essentially around the needle with the thread 3, 4, however many times you want, holding that kind of taut, and then you'll poke your needle back through from the front to the back while holding it and pull it down through. and that'll make that little knot. And then I knot the back of mine, just to make it a little more secure. And then I'll come in with some tape and tape it down as well, just to adhere it even better. So just poke a hole, bring your thread up through without all the way through. You'll see me, I took it apart a couple of times. I think it was this one. Um, I didn't normally I'll put a knot in the back so I can't pull my thread all the way through, but I was trying to make it a little more efficient and stopped doing that, and I pulled it all the way through a couple of times. So you just have to make sure you leave a long enough tail that you're not pulling it through. But you bring your thread up, you wrap your thread around your needle. I think I was doing 3 times. You hold that taut to the needle, put your needle back down through beside close to the knot, and as you pull your thread down towards the back, it'll form that knot, and then you cut it off and secure it to the back. And here's all my, or no, I guess not all of them, almost all the berries done. I chose 3 different spots to do on there. So I'm doing you using the French knots to adhere essentially that vellum piece so that I'm not using adhesive. I did, like I said, use a tiny bit of temporary adhesive on the back, but only a tiny, tiny bit, just enough so that the wreath didn't move on me while I was fiddling with the knots to get it started. And you're just finishing these ones up. And then that Make Merry I'm going to put in the middle, and the tag's going to go there. And here's where I took out, decided I didn't want the bow and just did just a knot instead and cut it down just a little bit. So the wreath is nice and secure. I'm just going to adhere my photo to the back of the other one first before adhering all the other things in case I have to trim. It's easier to trim things down without all that bulk. And it's also easier to adhere the photo as well without the bulk, especially since I had some bulky stuff on this side. I do have a little bit to trim off. I need to find my other, my little box cutter. I can't find it. This knife here is very dull, but I have not taken the time to find my box cutter. There's that all done. And then I had used this hole punch to punch the holes on the other side. So I'm just relining it back up to the holes I already made and punching those in there. And then I'm just going to use some red line tape to adhere the little pocket down. It's a little more heavy duty tape, double-sided tape. I usually use it if I have bulky items. So I'm just going to do 4 little strips, making sure I get one down the middle as well. And I'm just going to use my little multi-tool here to get the little strips off with my little temporary tape over there. That one is Mint Tape from scrapbook.com, and the multi-tool is also from scrapbook.com. It has a little plastic kind of, I don't even know what to call it, but it's really good for this kind of stuff. It has a nice sharp edge on it, and you can pull up your bits from your tape and things. That mint tape over there is holding all the backing from the red line tape so that it's not all over the place. And then the Make Merry, I'm just going to use some foam tape to pop it up a little bit over top of the wreath. And that side is done. So just going to bring in my little shaker again, and decided I would put the number over on that side. Not quite where I was going to put it originally, but but close enough. And there, the page is complete. We'll see you in the next one.